The differences in incorporating and trust structures in the United States and Canada. This is something that we get a lot. Actually, so much so that I'm making a video about it right now. There's a ton of financial and investment and side hustle, money-making videos coming off YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, and most of it is from the US. I know my algorithm feed is filled with investment and insurance, infinite banking, side business, real estate, Airbnbs, affiliate marketing, all this stuff. And if you're an entrepreneur, business owner like me, I'm assuming that yours is too. With a lot of these videos, they always talk about setting up your LLC or your S Corp and then having some sort of family trust structure to own it all so you can protect against liability and try to pay zero or as little tax as possible. And almost every week, we have someone here in Canada emailing or phoning about setting this up for themselves. In Canada, you can't do any of this. Now let me explain. We don't have S Corps or C Corps or LLCs. We do have different family trust structures, but they're not the same as in the US. So all of those people that are flipping houses or doing Airbnb arbitrage or buying car washes or passive income, blah, 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 telling you how to set up this structure, none of this works in Canada the same way. And don't even get me started on the ones that are talking about setting up your company in an offshore jurisdiction or moving your entire life to another country to save tax. Actually, I'll address this in the video a little later on. Here's what you can do in Canada. In Canada, you can incorporate your company. And there are 3 different corporate structures that you can use. You can be a sole proprietor, you can be a partnership, or you can incorporate. So just to set, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant. None of this is legal or tax advice, and you should consult your own lawyer and you should consult your own accountant to get legal and tax advice from them. So here's a few pros and cons of each of these types of structures. We'll start with sole proprietorship. This just allows you to run a business. You register with your provincial government and it saves your business name. There's not much other benefit to doing this, but usually it's a first step. This is usually what really small businesses do. Ones where you don't need any sort of tax advantages or if you don't have any sort of expensive liabilities or potential liabilities. People who are self-employed often fall into this category. There's not much paperwork, there's not much fees associated with it, and it's really easy to just do yourself. You could Google register sole proprietorship for your province and the process will come up. Now, partnerships, very similar, but involves more people. You're running a business and there's not much more to it. It's simple to set up and there's not a lot of paperwork or fees involved. Again, this is often really small businesses that do this. Or you can have large partnerships like law firms or accounting firms that are set up like this, but those are really different than, Johnny and Christy setting up a web design business out of a local WeWork. Now, let's talk about incorporation. There's different reasons and thresholds of when and how to do this, depending on who you talk to. So generally, people will talk to their accountant or their lawyer about incorporating, and your accountant and your lawyer are going to give you advice, maybe different advice, as they see it through their lens. So generally, the accountant will tell you to incorporate when you're bringing in more money than you need to live your personal life. Why? Let's say that you need $80,000 a year to pay your bills and live life, but your company brings in $500,000 after all expenses. Well, doesn't make sense to pay yourself $500,000 as an income and get taxed very high on this when you don't need to. Generally, this business owner is better off incorporating, paying themselves the $80,000 and leaving the rest in the company to be taxed at the corporate rate, which is usually much lower than paying personal income tax. Sometimes the accountant also just has like a blanket rule of thumb. Incorporate when you start making more than $100,000, which is a sort of good enough advice in most cases. The accountant generally looks at incorporation from a tax savings perspective. Now, your lawyer. Your lawyer often looks at incorporation from a liability perspective. The lawyer tells you to incorporate when you have something to lose, or when you sign on a liability, like you sign a new lease for the office or you bring on employees. You're on the hook for that lease. And if you screw something up with your employees, that could be a disaster for your small business if one of them sues you. So the lawyer will tell you to incorporate in order to protect yourself personally from the liability of the company. Neither of these is wrong. They're just giving you advice from their industry perspective. So who should do it? Well, if you're building a business that's going to generate you proper money, I would say incorporate you right away. If you see yourself making more than you need to live your life, and if you're going to have any sort of liabilities, then you should incorporate right away. Once you get this business up and running and generating real revenues and real profits, then you can call a lawyer and start asking them about if you need a trust. Before that, you probably don't. Who shouldn't do this, right? So if you're only just starting out something that's never going to be more than a very small business, you really don't need to incorporate. You for sure don't need a trust. You can if you want, but you don't have to. So for example, if you're making soap at home and you sell it on an Etsy shop or at a farmer's market and you're making like $500 a month, don't worry about it. Again, this is my opinion, not legal advice. We've had people come to us talking about all these complex structures they're going to implement and they're going to save taxes. They're not even making 20 grand a year, and they're probably not going to anytime soon, right? You don't need complex tax structures if this is your situation. Your time and effort would be better spent getting your revenues and your profits up before you start complicating your life with paperwork. We've also had something, like a teacher making 60 grand a year who's going to start a side hustle, and they're worried about a corporate structure and all of that for something that's never going to be more than extra spending money. They don't need to incorporate, and they for sure don't need to set up a trust. But they watched these videos online and they came to us with these dreams of making these super complex systems of companies and trusts that they would never need and that are going to cost them more to maintain than they're ever going to make on the side business. Setting up a corporate structure and putting it inside a trust adds complication to your work, and it adds a bunch of extra fees and filings that you need to do every year. If you have to pay your lawyer every year to maintain the corporation, you have to pay your lawyer every year to maintain the trust. You also have to pay your accountant every year to do the additional corporate and trust taxes. And this can be thousands of dollars, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars. I know just for our company and for our holding companies, for Save Pacific, we pay more than $10,000 a year just in accounting fees. So, this doesn't make sense to do unless you're making a certain amount of money. Now, I promise you I would address offshoring your company. So this has come up a bunch. And I can tell you right now, without knowing anything about you or without knowing anything about your business, you probably don't need to do anything offshore. Really, if you're not making tens of millions of dollars a year, or you don't have a net worth in the high tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, this isn't even something that you need to be thinking about. The cost to set this up and to maintain every year are going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars, and the risk, if you're doing this to evade taxes, is just way too high. So literally, we've had people come to us who are launching in like an MLM network marketing pyramid scheme, talking about how they're going to set up these offshore companies and blah, blah, blah. No, just stop. Go make $100. Then go make $1,000, then make 10,000, then make $1 million, then make 10 million before you even think about doing any of this. And just to be clear, if you're running an MLM network marketing pyramid scheme thing, we are not a good fit for you. And I can tell you that right now. So anyways, I hope that this video helped you decide if you should incorporate or if you should set up a trust and if you should be setting up offshore companies. No, you shouldn't. But before you go, let me ask you a favor. Please click like, please click share, please leave a comment below so that the algorithm and the robots know that you love us and that they will show our videos to more Canadian business owners and high-income professionals who are great people that we do want to work with. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next time.